Okay, so this is Harlem by Langston Hughes. I'm going to start just by reading out loud. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Okay. Um, this is gonna be interesting without being able to ask questions because I do consider myself first and foremost a question asker when I teach. But let's see what happens. So what do we notice about this poem? Like I've been telling you, the most important thing with poetry is that you just want to notice stuff. You want to try to notice things and see if you can come up with some kind of reason for maybe why that's happening. So what do we notice about this poem? Let's start with repetition. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin, sun, fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? So one thing. Let's start with this. Oh, my pen. Let's start with this word dream here. We see that again. We don't see the word dream necessarily too much, but we do get, does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust or over? Maybe it just sags like a heavy road, or does it explode? So, what's it? Obviously, it is the dream. So, even though we only get the word dream once, really we have it repeated like at least 5 times, and the whole poem is trying to deal with this, with the first sentence, the first question, what happens to a dream deferred? Okay, so there's something going on with this dream, right? We can say that much at least. What happens to a dream deferred? Deferred, do we know what that means? Normally I'd wait for someone to answer. So deferred is kind of like put off, to put something on hold, to put it on the back burner, to save it for later. So what happens to a dream deferred? What happens to a dream that we put off? A dream that we say, I can take care of that later. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? So we'll come back to the issue of what is meant by this dream, but let's just think about it as a dream for now. So let's go through the stanzas again. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? So, what I would ask you here is there anything similar about this stanza, I guess, that we have here? If we look at the structure of the poem, we've been talking a lot about structure lately. If we look at the structure, we have, some individual lines at the beginning and the end. We have this big unit here, a little unit here. So let's see if we can figure out some kind of reason, some kind of logic for why these things would be this way. So just this stanza, again. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? So they're all dealing, they're trying to talk about this dream, and they're thinking about what could happen when it's deferred. These are all suggestions, all possibilities. So one thing I would ask you about them is all the things in here. Are they good or are they bad? Just like we did with that Wallace Stevens poem that we looked at in class recently. So dry up like a raisin in the sun. Is that good or is that bad? I don't know. Maybe we like raisins. I'm not, not a big fan of raisins, so I don't know if that's good or bad. Dry up. That definitely sounds bad, right? That's being left out in the sun too long. That's what happens, if you're in desert or something. Drying up, not great. Fester like a sore. Sore. Definitely bad, right? And then run. So we have a running sore. Literally, a festering gangrenous wound. I'm gonna go bad, is what I'm gonna say. Does it stink like rotten meat? Obviously, that's all bad. Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet. Syrupy sweet, maybe that could be a good thing. A crusting and sugaring over, to me, that seems like, you left a lollipop on the table overnight and then came back and found it the next day and it's all kind of crusty and hard. Well, crust, right? It's all kind of crusty and hard. So I don't necessarily think that's good either. So again, I'm not trying to say my opinions are the only ones to have on these things. Obviously, I would love to hear all of your opinions, and hopefully I will through discussions and such. But I would say that most of these things are bad, right? Okay, so that's something that brings them all together. Let's go to this one. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Sagging like a heavy load. That also seems bad, but maybe in a different way. So what's bad about all of these ones in the first stanza? It's all kind of like things, I don't know, maybe like decaying, things going bad, right? Because they're left out too long, things past their expiration, stink like rotten meat that's gone bad, it's rotten, obviously. So there's a lot of decay here. Maybe just actually heavy load. This is a little bit different, you know. It's not like something going bad. It's something weighing you down. Something being a problem that you can't get rid of. So this is what I would also say is like for sure bad. Or does it explode? So I think our attention is drawn to this line a lot. Obviously, because the last line is set off by itself. It's also in italics. That's the original. That's another decision that a poet would be making to put something in italics like that. So does it explode? Would that be a good thing? Would that be a bad thing? It could be a good thing in that something's happening, right? If if all of these were more passive, this is at least active. So I don't know. Maybe that's better. If we think of an explosion, what do we think of? Fire, uh, the buildings exploding, whatever. Bad stuff. I guess depending on why it was happening, maybe. So what happens to a dream deferred? Okay, so mostly bad things happen, right? Passive specifically. So I think that there's one kind of interpretation of this poem if we think about what this would mean just for any dream that you had, right? Maybe for if we're thinking of what the dream means now that I want to come back here, it could be some kind of ambition, something that you want to do with your life. It could be an actual dream in terms of sleeping. I don't know exactly how that would work. I want to think a little bit about the outside context here. So this poem, it says right here, was written in 1951. It's called Harlem. Langston Hughes, known to be part of something called the Harlem Renaissance, which was a poetic movement with took place in Harlem in New York in like the 50s, 60s, civil rights related stuff definitely. We'll talk more about that later. Um, so in this context, what could this dream mean? Given the context, I think like what kind of dream were they interested at the time was something like Langston Hughes, who was a political activist, very involved. What would a dream for them be at the time? I think we could suggest something like equality, right? Uh, uh, we'll see later that it's often spoken about as a dream. The idea, for Black people at the time, to become some kind of equal, to really get some sort of legal standing, civil rights. Martin Luther King, of course, has this famous "I have a dream" speech. So I think we can think of the dream that way. So what would it mean then? What would the poem mean if this dream had something to do with equality, being equal in society? What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin sun, fester like a sore, and then run the sink like rotten meat, a crystal sugar over like a syrupy sweet? So does it just go bad? Does if this is what we want and this is what we're going for, if we don't get it, if it's put on hold, does it just go bad and just rot because we've left it there, right? Because we haven't done anything with it. We left it out too long. Maybe it just acts like a heavy load. Maybe it brings us down. It stays with us. It's a kind of an emotional toll on people to not be treated as equal in their own country. And then this last line becomes super interesting. Or does it explode? That would kind of be my big question that I would love for you to answer. Maybe we can pause the video, try to think of some answers now. If this dream has something to do with equality, then what would it mean for that dream to explode? I think there's ways to think about it. Maybe it could mean you're making it a reality or something. It's coming out of the mental into the physical, but exploding there. I think we could also take this word explode, in kind of a violent direction. I mentioned before, it brings up ideas of fire, destruction, So I think there's a reading of this poem where he's saying maybe the dream goes bad, maybe it's just a problem for us, maybe it holds us back, it holds us down, makes us feel like shit all the time. Or maybe it results in some kind of like possibly violent direct action. Maybe it results, in something like revolution or revolt or resistance or something like that. That might be kind of the necessary thing. What happens to a dream deferred if it explodes? That'd be if we put this dream on hold too long. This is just what's going to happen. It's not necessarily about wanting it to happen or calling for it, but that when you put the dream of something as important as societal equality on the back burner, this is just what's going to happen. You're going to end up with people in the streets. It reminds me of things like the race riots in Newark in the 1960s, or a lot of things that were happening like that during this time period with direct political action. So I think there's a way to read this poem as actually being like a really political commentary about the moment where it's written, involved in the civil rights movement. In terms of Langston Hughes kind of giving these options of like, okay, well, so either we go for this dream, we stop deferring it, we actually try to make things more equal, or we're going to end up with an explosion. We're going to end up with, a mass revolution or a mass protest or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far. You tell me. There's definitely other interpretations, but those are some things that I wanted to point out here. So let's see where that goes.